Hey everyone, this is Kate from Moonflower Moments. Welcome and welcome back. Today I want to share with you all of the things that I've been getting up to in my practice. So this is a little bit of a practice debrief kind of video. And I want to share with you the decks that are helping me to get in touch with nature, to get outside, to really just kind of take a play and see nature from both the profound experience as well as the playful experience that it is. So, quite recently, I went on my 5th wedding anniversary trip with my husband, and we went to a place we have been dying to go for several years, and it is a bed and breakfast run by a former botany professor. And so, we woke up at 5 a.m. to go check out his moth sheets. So, essentially, you can keep a light on all night. It has to be a specific type of light, I don't know what kind. And if the light is shining against like a white sheet, the moths will fly towards it. And so this botany professor has been taking moth counts on his 26-acre property for many, many years right now. And it was so beautiful to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and just kind of be in touch face to face with nature every day. There were literally hundreds of butterflies, hundreds of different native species. And I came back from that trip feeling so refreshed and kind of ready to kind of extend my experience working with nature in a one-on-one personal capacity. So some of the practices I'm sharing with you I have done before. Others, when I kind of sat down on my tarot desk this morning, I was like, I really kind of feel like this pairing could work or this match could work. So I haven't tried it out officially, but it's kind of on my to-do list to do for some of these pairings. So I'll share with you all the decks I've been using, but more importantly, all of the practices I've kind of been engaging with to stay in touch with nature. So the first kind of grouping is a little bit more extensive, and I actually do this kind of 4-deck kind of reading in a set of 2. I do 2 decks and then in one go and then 2 decks in the next. So I'm going to split it up like that on camera. And I think this is one of my more unconventional ways that I use my cards to engage with nature. This is the Faceted Garden Oracle, and I pair it with Totem Flower Essences, which is another oracle. Both of these are indie decks. I'll leave a link in the description box below to both of them. There we go. And while these might not be like the most aesthetic match, I really don't even care because that's not what it is about for me. I use these decks in particular to help me notice on an integral level the first things that I should pay attention to in my environment. So on the left, I ask myself if I'm about to go on a walk or I'm about to go sit outside, what is something that I need to pay attention to? So if I were to pick, for example, entwined, this is a little weird to share, but I was just outside a few minutes earlier and I saw 2 carpenter bees making more carpenter bees. So I kind of set my focus for that outing with this card of I'm going to look for this particular thing. Whereas on the deck on the right, this is the color that I'm looking for. I found that like these moody colors really go well quite with nature and the things that I'm looking for in the natural world. So in this case, I could spend special attention kind of looking for this marigold color or perhaps this teal that is in the background. I do like to spend a lot of time thinking about leaves and how so many leaves are like green, but a lot of them are also have this kind of bluish tint. So I might even take this as an opportunity to take a little bit more time looking at the different colors and striations of leaves. But in that sense, the pairing works really well for me in ensuring that I stay grounded. And while I've been using the deck on the right, the flower totem essences, the totem flower essences. Sorry, I just came back from a hike and I'm a little tired. To notice the colors around me. I've also been using it in the sense of like if a particular card comes up and there's something on it, like I do still look for that object too. So in the case of this is a heavy like, hey, look for the birds. And because it has the term empath on it, it could possibly be that I'm looking for a opportunity where birds are kind of flocking together and they are engaging in community. Or it could just be that because this has a little bit of a red color or a little bit of a pink color, that I'm looking for something like a red-bellied woodpecker that has actually like a red belly but also a red head. So in that case, I'm still kind of looking for that color. The new moon would definitely be a plant that is perhaps in dormancy. That's how I would read this in particular. But it's been really nice to take the time to intentionally look for things that I wouldn't always look for. Like every single time I'm going outside, I'm looking for a pollinator. I'm looking for this plant, which kind of, it's made of valerian, but it definitely looks a lot like boneset, which is in bloom right now. And the bonesets have pollinators like crazy, right? So like this is something that I'm kind of already doing, but looking for the stars and looking for kind of like this darker teal color, that's not something that I would spend a lot of time doing. So this is kind of like a nighttime match, like go outside and kind of notice what's going on in the nighttime. So this has been a lot of fun. In particular, I just went on a walk with my husband, and I'll show you the cards I pulled for us. This was our pairing for the day. I pulled Tiger Lily, and I also pulled Nocturnus. So I paid special attention to things that were dormant. That was really important to me to kind of get very close and up and personal with the plants that perhaps are maybe not blooming right now, but are things that I can come back and look at in the spring when they are not dormant. And then the red really kind of tickled me pink because when I was shuffling this deck, I pulled a card that was not red. I actually pulled this one, which was Black Mirror. But I heard in my head very clearly red. So I went back and actually intentionally picked this because I felt like that messaging was stronger. And then I set this aside for my husband and I to kind of look for together. And it was so much fun because I've always wanted to have hurricane lilies, which they are not native, so I refuse to buy them, but they grow everywhere in abundance around Louisiana. People call them hurricane lilies because they come up in hurricane season. I'll put a picture on the screen of one my dad took quite recently. But I've been looking for these hurricane lilies forever. And right when we were about to leave, my husband and I saw like just a little glimpse of red in our far corner of our eye, and it was hurricane lilies, and it was a huge batch of them. I actually ended up getting 5 bulbs, so I'm going to plant it in my garden. My granny has it spread all over her gravesite, so it was her favorite flower, so my dad planted a whole field of them. So I really feel very thankful that I was able to kind of get some from the wild today. I don't feel bad about taking them because they are non-native, they are very aggressive, so the 5 bulbs that I took will probably be better contained in my yard anyway. But anyway, at that point, I'm just kind of rambling, but it was such a fulfilling experience to be able to see things that I normally wouldn't see. And so I am definitely going to continue this practice, not even reading in a sense of divination, but using these decks in a different way to get in touch with what is around me. Okay, so that was kind of the first layer to the reading, is like literally what am I looking for? And I feel like that's kind of like all a walk needs to be. What am I looking for? But I always like to add like a little bit of spiritual label to my walks, or rather a spiritual level. And so I went ahead and grabbed Cantigee. As well of course, Herbcrafters, which makes it on my Instagram all the time. I do use other decks, but I use this one all the time to connect to nature. So this one makes it onto my Instagram quite a bit. So with Cantigee and with Herbcrafters, I really feel ultimately that Herbcrafters is a deck that is meant to help you figure out what your role is within an ecosystem. So since it is essentially a deck that encourages you to kind of put your hands and kind of be that Herbcrafter, I do find that this is a very involved deck. Cantigee, on the other hand, is much more metaphorical. So in the tunnels of our ancestors, the self-tending fire, your feet are 2 fish, which is one of my favorite cards in this deck. But the deck is written from like a more of an ecological standpoint in the guidebook. And so I really appreciate that bend, because there's a huge part of the guidebook that encourages us to take action and really take responsibility for our environment. And so knowing what I know about these 2 decks, how this one is all about actively making and doing things, and this one is about taking responsibility for our environment, I wanted to pair these 2 together to add that spiritual level of that caretaker of the environment in. So this morning I went ahead and I pulled these 2 cards. And like I said, the Cantigee was for my responsibility to the environment, and my Herbcrafters was essentially what is my role within this responsibility? How do I carry out this responsibility? And I, of course, pulled this beautiful card about a hummingbird and languor. And in the deck, it really emphasizes in the guidebook that hummingbirds have hearts that can actually beat up to 12,000 beats per minute. But during the winter, their heartbeat slows and they go into a dormancy period. So there was a heavy kind of emphasis on dormancy here. And so the divination message, or the divinatory message, was essentially for me to calm down, but because I was reading it in a responsibility point of view, I was really trying to think about the ways that I can take care of what is dormant and resting right now. And so my husband and I, the last time we went to this walk, we had seen a plant that was incredibly rare, and we had spoken to some of our plant people about it, and they were interested in harvesting some of the seeds. So we went with them today and we harvest some of the seeds, and essentially, you know, the plant, it's no longer blooming, it is completely seeding. And I felt really appropriate about being that page of earth, you know, kind of using my hands to collect those seeds, but still leaving plenty enough for the plant to reproduce. So that way we are able to propagate the seeds, bring it back to the nonprofit that we work with, and hopefully sell this plant to engage more people in planting it in their native gardens. So there was a bit of a mixture here of, like, once again, looking for things that were dormant, and then once again, taking action. Also, being that this is the Page of Earth, I was with someone that is incredibly well known within the plant community. So I really also put myself in a place of learning and asked as many questions as I possibly could, but also got my hands a little dirty doing the work too. So I found this to be a very fulfilling opportunity to get in touch with what is around me and take responsibility for it. You know, it's one thing to notice it, but it's a whole nother level to take that extra layer into account. And I think that this grouping has been working really well for me. I actually kind of think it looks really aesthetically pleasing together. I didn't realize that until I kind of put it down and I'm seeing it on camera. But the Living Mountain and the Nine of Earth. What a beautiful card to receive paired with the Nine of Earth, you know, something that is so stable and such a pinnacle of success, and kind of using your resources effectively, especially with these apples here. So this is my other kind of second layer to that reading. There's a literal layer of what am I going to pay attention to, and then when I notice it, what am I supposed to do with it, which comes through with Cantigee and the Herbcrafters. All right, next I'm going to share a newer deck that I have, and this is one that I've kind of started to integrate into an already existing practice. So I have done this before, and this is going to be my Hush Tarot. So of course, I think the natural thing to think about when you think about the Hush Tarot is specifically the fact that everything is kind of dead and dying. It is the perfect deck for autumn, for going inward, for really kind of facing the concept that you are shedding these layers and sinking into a place of kind of conserving that energy for winter. So what I have liked to do in the past is actually leaf divination, and it's one of my favorite practices to do. So for example, I will go out in my yard and I will pick up leaves, and I really kind of get into a trance state when I'm doing this. I picked up a lot of like tallow leaves, these Chinese tallow leaves. Here's this really cool one, which is kind of split in half. Half of it is kind of decayed and then the other half is not. This is a crepe myrtle. I liked the different colors in this one too. And what I tend to do is pretty regularly on my walk, if I have a like a leaf that is like speaking out to me, I will pick up that leaf and I keep it in a bowl on my desk. So these are all the leaves that I have like picked up for the day. And if I want to kind of produce a divinatory message with these leaves, what I can do and what I have done in the past is just kind of like pick one out from the bowl and kind of read it. So for example, if I'm feeling very called to these dual tone ones today, these ones that kind of are split right in the middle, and I oftentimes engage with this practice with or without tarot. It's really kind of something I do all the time pretty naturally. I think it's my most like authentic and natural way of divining, but I can always add this later of, for example, this. Oh, the Death card, how fucking beautiful for this. I just picked that randomly. And I like the Hush Tarot to kind of represent what is dying in my life. So in this case, I had death for what is dying, and you have no idea how much I desperately, really, really, really needed to see this right now. And I've spoken before about how a lot of times when I am reading, I will actually kind of get into a state in which I start to kind of see things move a little bit. And so in the case of this, it's almost as if I can imagine, or rather can see, I say imagine, but like I don't want to like downplay my intuition with this, but I can see kind of this leaf part right here, the part that is like dead, kind of spreading in this direction. So I think I'm kind of closer to shedding. And so essentially what is dying is my death. You know, maybe I am finally almost through this really tumultuous period of very hard, very heavy death moments and tower moments. And maybe in a sense, like it's time for me to kind of let that go. And I think part of that is something that I realized when I pulled these two, because this is the first leaf that I saw today when I was walking and I picked it up. And then when I went home, I was like, hey, there's another one that kind of looks just like that and is kind of jewel tone. So I hope that makes sense. You know, the Hush Tarot is essentially what is like dead, what is dying. I think that is a beautiful representation of it. And then the leaves themselves are the actual message, not the clarifier, but the actual message that I need to hear. So it adds that extra layer onto it. And a lot of the divination comes, I'm going to go ahead and like switch up this deck so you can kind of see some things when I'm talking. A lot of the intuition comes from like me specifically kind of like picking leaves. I kind of pick them seemingly at random, but it's a very intuitive process to me. Or even like me keeping them in a bowl. I usually have about 10 to 20 on my desk at any point in time, and I just like pull one, and that becomes my message for that time period. Because I think with, especially with particularly interesting leaves like these, or even like this one that I picked up today, I just love like the splotches of color here. This leaf feels very hopeful for me. You know, it is yellow and it is bright. And I think I'm actually kind of running away from orange being my favorite color. I've said that for a really long time. I've been really feeling this yellow for quite some time now. So I don't know, I think it's kind of something that's really beautiful to see reflected back in the leaf, is this kind of like sunny, beautiful disposition. So if I haven't lost you already, that is the other thing. And like I said, I've always kind of done leaf divination, but I don't know if I've ever really talked about it. So I thought I would show a seasonally appropriate deck that I do it with. And you really can like change it up for anything. You know, I just picked this one because it is a deck that represents like dying, but I do have, for example, the Witch Sisters, which is like right here. And the Witch Sisters to me kind of feels like a strong, steady base. So I could pull a card from this and say, you know, what is the base? And then get the message from the leaf that I find outside of like what that base is. Kind of act as a clarifier in that sense. So it really can work with like any deck you want. I think the key point is just to let the leaf be the message, let that be the thing that kind of shines. Because that is the thing that kind of like encourages you to go outside the most. And I guess that's kind of my big goal here. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and show you a couple more. So the pairing that I found this morning that I have not tried yet, but I think is really incredible and smart, if I do say so myself, is going to be my How to Be a Moonflower deck and my Tarot of the Moon Garden. So let's see if we can fit the traditional Tarot Oracle in the middle on my camera. Hopefully I've scooted up enough for that. So for those of you who are not familiar with this deck, this How to Be a Moonflower deck does have like illustrations on the back that are really beautiful. And then the message is on the front. And I've heard a lot of people talk about how this deck is really hard to put into practice because, you know, it quite literally is telling you, do this, do that. I'm going to cut the deck. Beautiful. Look at those colors. And I agree, you know, in terms of like practical usability, I think that the How to Be a Moonflower deck is very specific to if you kind of want to start your own thing with it. I don't think that it necessarily plays nicely with other existing practices. But with that being said, I have pulled How to Be a Moonflower, one of these cards, for my altar space. I have a whole kind of shelf that's kind of dedicated to it. And I've been working with these cards on a longer basis until essentially like I knock out what it's telling me to do. So it is very activity based. So I do think you need to kind of take time to work with this deck. But I kind of thought it would be fun to give context to this activity with the Tarot of the Moon Garden. So for example, you know, if I want to, let me get to a pulling, go for a night swim. That's fun, and I think that's worthy of doing at any point in time, but I really kind of enjoy this paired next to the Tarot of the Moon Garden because now I'm kind of seeing why I need to go for that night swim. So I have the Ace of Staves, which is the Ace of Wands, and Temperance. And so right away, this is kind of telling me that I have been burning way too hot. And so I really have been spending a lot of time with my feet kind of firmly rooted on the ground, but also because Temperance is a fire card and it's Sagittarius, that maybe I have been kind of moving so much in kind of the physical direction that I really need to take some time for myself and kind of relax in that water to sort of kind of cool off and kind of come back to myself. So now all of a sudden, this doesn't seem like just instructions that I have to kind of put on my to-do list, but it's kind of turned into a bit of self-care. And I'm finding that to be really interesting. So look for the night blooming flowers. Why might that be? Eight of Pentacles and then Ace of Swords. This would definitely get me outside. Hello, we have moonflowers here. I love that. But this kind of looks vaguely like some of the jasmine that I have in my garden, which is night blooming, and I haven't done a really great job of going to look at it, even though one of my close friends kind of gave me one of hers. And so between the Eight of Pentacles and the Ace of Swords, this is a clear message to me that I need to go and learn more about the night blooming flowers, to see that as kind of like a dedicated mission of the Eight of Pentacles to learn more about the different types of plants that are in my environment. Beautiful. Take a night hike. I have been completely kind of lost in the messy middle of the process with these Seven of Pentacles, perhaps over analyzing and over evaluating my actions and myself. And that has really kept me coming too close to home and feeling a little bit anxious. I always feel like there's a little bit of anxiety with the Four of Pentacles. And so my self-care is to take a night hike. So I have already been using this deck, and now I feel like with that extra layer on it of why I should be still and listen, there's more incentive to me to go out and follow the instructions of this deck. And some of them are like home-based, like drift into a dream, but who says you can't do that inside your garden? Stay up until dawn. I love this color match. I'll show you just a few more. Listen for nighttime creatures. Beautiful. And look at how many critters are in this Ten of Cups. So this has like kind of the stillness of listening and then all of the little kind of nightlife that's around you. Beautiful, beautiful. So I haven't done the Tarot of the Moon Garden yet with this, but I kind of feel, you know, sometimes you find like a really good pairing and it just kind of lights a fire in you that, you know, you need to do something new and try something out. So I'm really proud of that pairing. All right, and then for my last little pairing, this is one that I do use quite often, and this is kind of like a pairing of delight. So we're talking about the inner child let loose. So as you know, I've been doing quite a bit of inner child work, especially over the summer, and so I feel like this is kind of a carryover of that, blending that inner child work with that nature-driven idea and like practice. So with that being said, I absolutely use this crazy deck. It is called the Inspirational Visions Oracle deck. I've never seen it anywhere on YouTube. And I go ahead and I use this with mystical fairies. This is not an aesthetic match, but just bear with me. It does work like pretty proficiently together. There we go. Is it Mystic Fairy? Mystical Fairy? Hold up, let me look. Mystic Fairy, and this one's by Llewellyn. So I received the Inspirational Visions deck as a kind of add-on buy. It came on as a complete surprise when I purchased the Sawyer's Path Tarot used. The seller just kind of threw this in here, and I'm going to show you this deck first. So this deck is quite funny. It has a lot of repeating cards, but like things like become friends with the fairies in your garden, absolutely that both lends very well to childhood play, as well as get outside to your garden. Discover the beauty and innocence of flowers, especially that this is Morning Glory Fairy. I have a lot of wild Morning Glory in my yard. Mounting Pegasus, ascend to great heights. Garden of Unicorns, hope lives in the darkness. So what I've been using this for is kind of like my garden aspirations, my garden play aspirations is what I would call it. So I keep this deck on my altar upstairs. Right outside my bedroom window is a screened-in porch that overlooks my backyard, and so I kind of keep the deck close to that space. And because it features the garden so heavily, it's kind of a reminder to myself to be very whimsical and still kind of engage with the garden in the sense of let the sunshine in. So laughter lets the sunshine in. So some of these cards are more practical than others. Stay on your path. Don't be afraid of the creatures or the dark side. So, you know, maybe perhaps I would encourage people, or would even take some time to learn about different types of snakes or different types of spiders. Pretty much anything that is welcome in my garden is welcome in my garden, even if they are things that people call like creepy crawlies. So I can kind of find like a literal message from this deck. But then sometimes, like this one, the Elf Scribe, the stories of the wee folk are delightful. I don't have an exact kind of application of this deck. So I kind of like that it's whimsical as well as practical, but when I kind of need to ground the message, I've been using it paired with mystical fairies or mystic fairies. So I can pull a card from this to try to kind of figure out once again, like how am I going to engage with this energy? So for example, and I'll show more cards of this as I go, and I have to get really creative with this, so it comes like a little bit of a challenge, is the Lovers. So perhaps in that sense, I'm not actually learning about the wee folk at all, but instead I am writing down what I learn about watching different plants kind of cross-pollinate. That's kind of what comes to mind with the Lovers. And that in itself is a very engaging activity because I have like some scarlet sage that are white, I have some that are red, and so naturally I get some pink ones as well. So this kind of helps me figure out for some of these more like off the wall cards, how do I approach this activity? My eye is kind of catching like this little castle that's on the background of this. So sometimes I kind of read the message, sometimes I don't. I have a gnome garden in my favorite garden bed, and I play with the gnome ornaments all the time and kind of rearrange their little villages and stuff like that. And I feel like that's very in keeping with the Page of Cups. So perhaps this message is not necessarily about the fire dragon at all, even though you could claim that any form of play is kind of creative play, but is instead telling me to go kind of look for the small things and engage in moving around that gnome furniture and setting up different kind of gnome villages in the way that a Page of Cups would. This is really sweet. This is a very clear message that I need to spend time with, probably my husband outside, kind of looking at the moon. Very, very sweet. So like I said, some of them really kind of make a lot of sense to me. The Wheel of Fortune and Hansel and Gretel Lost in the Woods. Especially with kind of this looking like very autumnal, I definitely need to look at the changing of the seasons and the things that are about to be lost, or rather not lost, but have, you know, about to go dormant for the season, because there isn't a lot of time left and there's nothing I can do to stop it. So I think you get the point. And it, like I said, you get kind of matches like this and you're like, whoa, these two things definitely don't go together. But I like this deck in particular, the Mystic Fairies, because I think that it's just playful enough that it can kind of lend itself to this inspirational visions very well, but also because of the size of the Fae. You know, I want something that is reminding me to kind of look at the smaller aspects of the garden, the Six of Cups here, and to engage with the Dogwood Fairy, you know, take time to dream in the flowers. This message is pretty consistent. Six of Cups definitely reminds me of dreaming all the time and taking that sweet time to kind of rest and dream for yourself. So I think it makes sense to me. There's lots of Fae in both decks, and so just use these two together to help me engage with what is around me. And I think that is my last pairing. So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. So I'm going to go ahead and leave y'all with some images and some footage that I took over the weekend. I will say that I got to spend one of the best weekends of my life engaging with nature. And so I took some videos to kind of share with you guys here. So I hope that all of you have a wonderful day, and I will see you again next time.